Hello and welcome, dear students. In today's program, we shall discuss about a realistic school of thought and its contribution towards education. The main behavioral objectives which we are going to accomplish after the completion of this topic are to know the origin of realism, and we will be able to understand the concept of realism in the light of various definitions. We will also be able to know the various characteristics of realism, and we will be able to analyze educational philosophy of realism. Dear students, first of all, let us introduce realism as a school of thought. Realism emerged as a movement in philosophy against the extreme idealist view of the world around. To do away with the world of imagination, dream, or intuition is the general meaning of realism. A realist is one who believes in what he is at present with all his strengths and weaknesses, and does not dwell in the world of utopia. Technically, realism believed in that knowledge only which is acquired by our senses. If anything found to be true on the basis of observation or experimentation, only then it is taken to be true. Mind has actually no role to play in determining the realities of an object. That is, objects are real, independent of mental phenomena. If we are able to perceive a thing by our senses, it is real. Realism, as a general temper of mind, is a disposition to keep ourselves and our preferences out of our judgment of things, letting the objects speak for themselves. Realism is a word frequently applied to tendencies in literature and art, and to certain disillusioned and unillusioned policies in politics. Realism in philosophy has something in common with these trends, but not too much. All forms of realism agree in their interest in objects as they are, in their confidence that we can see them as they are, and in their hostility in every impulse to substitute our wishes or ideals for the facts, or otherwise to make our conscious selves the center of importance in the universe. Dear students, let me tell you who are the chief contributors of realistic school of thought. The realist trend in the philosophy can be traced back to Aristotle, who interested himself in particular facts of life, as against Plato, who was interested in abstraction and generalities. Aristotle is recognized as the father of realism. Another great name of this school is Saint Thomas Aquinas, who infused the realist spirit in religion. Comenius, in his great didactic, wrote that mind is only a passive recipient reflecting all things around it as a spherical mirror. John Locke put it more vehemently when he said that, quote, "The mind is a tabula rasa," means clean slate, and reality is outside the mind, unquote. After him, philosophers and thinkers like Immanuel Kant, John Frederick Herbert, and William James affirmed that the external world is a real world. Students, let us discuss a few definitions so that we can get a comprehensive view about realism. Butler, a great philosopher, says, quote, "Realism is the reinforcement of our common acceptance of this world as it appears to us." Unquote. According to this definition, reality is what we perceive, and our common perception gets reinforced with the help of this philosophy through observation and experimentation. Another philosopher, whose name is Ruskin, he says, quote, "The aim of new realism is to expound a philosophy which is not inconsistent with the fact of common life and with the development in physical sciences." Unquote. Now, let us discuss forms of realism. Students, there are various forms of realism, which are: number one, humanistic realism; second, social realism; third, the sense realism; and fourth, neo-realism. Dear students, first of all, let us discuss what is humanistic realism. Humanistic realism has dominant place in the old literature and study of classics. The Dutch international scholar Erasmus, the Frenchman Rabelais, and the English poet Milton were the key exponents of humanistic realism in education. This form of realism emphasizes the general human welfare through education by saying that human beings are the fundamental realities in the material world. So, realities of the material objects must be examined in terms of human realities. Second, social realism. The chief contributors of social realism are Lord Montaigne and John Locke. Social realism is one in which education comes through the contact of man with things. The thing which is socially useful to us is only real. The aim of this philosophy is to make human life happy and successful by fulfilling the social needs. Then, third, the sense realism. The chief contributors of this philosophy are Mulcaster, Francis Bacon, and Comenius. According to this philosophy, knowledge primarily comes from senses, not from words. So, senses of the child should be used to the maximum in the process of education. The main aspects of this system are: number one, mother tongue as the medium of instruction; second, more importance to the study of nature through the study of science subjects instead of languages and humanities; third, more emphasis on practical and utilitarian education; fourth, psychological method of teaching; and fifth, deductive method is more important than inductive method. Then, neo-realism. The important exponents of this branch of realism are Whitehead and Bertrand Russell. According to this form of realism, rules and procedures of science are also changeable. So, there is no permanent nature of truth or reality. Dear students, after this, let us discuss some important principles and characteristics of realism. Number first, nature of universe. Universe is not only external, but it is governed by the inexorable law. It seems less true in social sciences as compared to natural sciences. It is because that man has not yet perfected techniques of ascertaining and stating the laws of social phenomena. Second, reality differs from truth. Reality is concerned to what actually is, and truth is its image. The test of truth is its correspondence to reality. Then third, values. Morals are either enforced by social processes or are self-enforcing through their natural consequences, means close to naturalism. Meaning thereby, values are derived from the laws of nature. Fourth, nature of truth. According to this philosophy, the phenomena world, that is material world, is real. There is no world beyond this material world. Thus, realism is the antithesis of subjective idealism. Fifth, belief about knowledge. Senses are the gateways of knowledge. The impression and sensation, which are results of contact between external objects and the senses, is nothing but knowledge. Thus, knowledge based on observation or experience is always real. Bertrand Russell, in his book Analysis of Mind, writes that the ultimate constituents of matter are not atoms but sensations. Then sixth, opposite to idealism. Here, there is no scope of imagination without experimentation at all. There is no existence of God, soul, or heaven according to this philosophy. They are merely the product of human imagination. Then seventh, nature of man and mind. Man is a part of material world, so he is also real. Now, dear students, let us analyze the contribution of realism towards education. In education, for the realist, the world is as it is, and the job of schools would be to teach students about the world. Goodness for the realist would be found in the laws of nature and the order of the physical world. Furthermore, ethics is the law of nature, or natural law, and aesthetics is the reflection of nature. Students, let us discuss aims of education as suggested by realistic school of thought. Realists do not believe in general and common aims of education. According to them, aims are specific to each individual and his perspectives, and each one has different perspectives. The aim of education should be to teach truth rather than beauty, to understand the present practical life. The sense realists expressed that the education should be conducted on universal basis. Greater stress should be laid upon the observation of nature and the education of senses. Neorealists aim at developing all-round development of the learners with the development of their organs. The realists' primary educational aim is to teach those things and values which will lead to the good life. But for the realists, the good life is equated with one which is in tune with the overarching order of natural law. Thus, the primary aim of education becomes to teach the child the natural and moral law, or at least as much of it as we know, so that his generation may lead the right kind of life, one in tune with the laws of universe. Realists, just as other philosophers, have expressed the aims of education in various forms. According to John Wilde, the aim of education is fourfold: to discern the truth about things as they really are, and to extend and integrate such truth as is known to gain such practical knowledge of life in general and of professional functions in particular as can be theoretically grounded and justified, and finally to transmit this in a coherent and convincing way both to young and to old throughout the human community. Russell, another philosopher, follows the same line of reasoning in his discussion of educational objectives. He too would not object to the schools assisting the child to become a healthy, happy, and well-adjusted individual. But he insists that the prime goal of all school activities should be the development of intelligence. Intelligence is that human function which enables one to acquire knowledge. The school should do all in its power to develop intelligence. Now, students, let us discuss the role of teacher as suggested by realism. The teacher for the realist is simply a guide. The real world exists and the teacher is responsible for introducing the student to it. To do this, he uses lectures, demonstrations, and sensory experiences. The teacher does not do this in a random or haphazard way. He must not only introduce the student to nature, but show him the regularities, the rhythm of nature so that he may come to understand natural law. Now, dear students, let us discuss curriculum as suggested by realistic school of thought. According to humanistic realism, classical literature should be studied, but not for studying its form and style, but for its content and ideas it contained. Since realism attached more importance to the study of natural sciences and contemporary social life, neorealism gives stress on physics and on humanistic feelings. Physics and psychology, sociology, economics, ethics, politics, history, geography, agriculture, varied arts, languages, and so on are the main subjects to be studied according to the neo-realists. Dear students, after curriculum, let us discuss its methods of teaching. The realists prefer to use inductive logic, going from the particular facts of sensory experience to the more general laws deducible from these data. These general laws are seen as universal natural law. Herbert has developed the 5-step method of teaching. These steps include: number first is preparation. An attempt is made to have the student recall earlier materials to which the new knowledge might be related. The purpose of the lesson is explained, and an attempt to interest the learner is made. Second, presentation. The new facts and materials are set forth and explained. Third, association. A definite attempt is made to show similarities and differences and to draw comparisons between the new materials and those already learned and absorbed into the apperceptive mass. Fourth, generalization. The drawing of inferences from the materials and an attempt to find a general rule, principle, or law. Fifth, application. In general, this meant the working of academic exercises and problems based on both the new information and relevant related information. Then, dear students, discipline as suggested by realists. Discipline in realism is adjustment to objectivity. It is necessary in order to enable the child to adjust himself to his environment and concentrate on his work. Bringing out change in the real world is impossible. The student himself is a part of this world. He has to admit this fact and adjust himself to the world. A disciplined student is one who does not withdraw from the cruelties, tyrannies, hardships, and shortcomings pervading the world. Realism has vehemently opposed the withdrawal from life. One has to adjust oneself to this material world. Now, let us discuss some merits of realism. Number one, realistic education emphasizes objectivity. The result is that more and more objective methods of teaching and evaluation are gaining ground today. Second, realism emphasizes that education should be practical and utilitarian. Now, impractical and useless education has come to be regarded as waste of time, energy, and resources. Third, in place of repressionistic discipline, a synthetic form of impressionistic and emancipatory discipline is being accepted by educationists today. Fourth, realism prescribed realistic and useful aims of education. Such aims are directly related to the needs of the individuals and demands of the society. Dear students, though we know realism is a great philosophy and has contributed in various walks of life, but some philosophers have criticized it, and that criticism goes like, number one, it denies the existence of metaphysical world in total, but it fails to answer several questions such as, number one, is there any power behind the physical world? Second, is this physical world absolute and supreme? Third, what are the limits of this physical world? And so on. Then, realism regards the senses as gateways of knowledge. When senses come in contact with physical objects. But how illusion occurs when senses are so powerful sources of knowledge? This is the question that realism is unable to answer. Again, it does not believe in imagination or emotions. The fact, however, is that without imagination, no scientific invention takes place. Another criticism, it takes only worldly pleasure in account. This belief is also unsounded because many people commit suicide only due to lack of spiritual bliss. Again, if science subjects are given much preference to arts and humanities, it may create imbalance in the curriculum. Dear students, from the discussion, we may conclude realism is the reinforcement of our common acceptance of this world as it appears to us. Reality is what we perceive, and our common perception gets reinforced with the help of this philosophy through observation and experimentation. The doctrine of realism asserts that there is a real world of things behind and corresponding to the objects of our perceptions, a bit deeper than the phenomena world. The aim of realism is to expound a philosophy which is not inconsistent with the fact of common life and with the development in physical science. According to this philosophy, knowledge primarily comes from senses, not from words. So, senses of a child should be used to the maximum in the process of education. It otherwise means that truth can only be gained by observation and experience, that is, by the contact between external object and the senses. With this, dear students, we conclude our today's lecture. Hope you enjoyed and understood it well. Thank you. Goodbye.